Whoa, 10 years? Really? Volunteers, you made it happen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's take this road back. Well, just starting with this year, this year has definitely been a unique year, but even still, we finished up the Fall League, and we believe it was a huge success. Seeing you guys pour into your teams was amazing. Salvations and deeper relationships with God through Jesus here in the Fall League was awesome. But we don't really get the full picture here because we don't see what's going on in Central America, in Nicaragua, and also in Honduras. So we've got Alex, David, Jairo Rubio, Jairo Rodriguez, and Mario in Honduras, and the Spates family in Chinandega all working overseas. Here, like in the Fall League, sharing the gospel and pushing guys to take those steps and getting involved in a D group at their local high school was and is our goal. Although it's been understandably hard for you leaders and your D group members to meet. People have grown in their faith out of the Fall League, but in the overall picture, there is sort of this cycle we look to and strive for at Full Count. This discipleship process, paired with missions. Sending people out to use their talents, equipped with the gospel and faith in Christ, to reach the lost. Yes, we had to take a step down this year because the borders have been closed internationally. But man, it's been a wild ride as we've seen you go into the world, here and abroad. Total of all our missions, 240 guys have gone internationally on 54 weeks of missions. Over a year on the mission field. That's time and that's effort. But hey, let's go all the way back to the beginning. In 2010 to Ocotal, where our missions teams began. And most of y'all know we weren't even Full Count Ministries then. What was God doing in the hearts of people, the baseball players? Why even baseball to begin with? Where did this whole thing begin?
Well, Full Count really started for me, I guess, kind of the year before our mission trip. So in 2009, Nathan Davenport and I were in a discipleship group, and so he had a really good year walking through that discipleship process. And I remember one of the things he said to me during the year was like, if the next person who asked me to go on a mission trip, I'm going to go on a mission trip. And I remember thinking, hey, I'm going on a mission trip. Do you want to go to Nicaragua with me in the fall? And so he said, yes. And so this was 2009, and it was a backpacking trip. One of the days we played baseball on the side of a mountain. It's one of the highlights of my life. But it was amazing because it was the only time that we could engage the men. The rest of the time it was just kids and stuff. And so the rest of the trip, we started thinking about it would be great to have a trip, to come down and play baseball.
We had gone on that extreme hiking missionary adventure with XMA, and on the way back from that we had played baseball on a mountain, and on the way back down the Cocoa River I was beside Terry Parks, and we were talking about the week, what had happened, and he had mentioned, or I had mentioned to him that I'd never dreamed we'd played baseball on this trip, and he said that they played baseball pretty much year round in Nicaragua, in Ocotal, which is where the mission house was that we were going back to. We started our trip there, we were going to end our trip there, and he said they played it year round in Ocotal, and that he tried or had mentioned to several of the bigger churches that had come through there that Ocotal would be a good place to do sports ministry. And so we talked about it for a few minutes and then moved on. Other things happened. We're going back down the river and we're having a good time. But it stuck with me, sports ministry, baseball, and And I didn't say anything to anybody until I got back.
We planned this trip, and man, we had so much fun getting ready. I mean, and one of the things I remember was the guys and how excited they were to kind of relive the glory days. They were much more excited about going to play baseball than they were about going and being on mission with God.
So I reached out to, I was playing softball with Chris Edwards and Grant Edwards, Jeff Parsons, went to high school with Bryce, was in a small group with Josh LeMay, knew he had played at Belmont. John Smithson was in a small group, played. We'd known each other for a handful of years at that point. And so I just started calling these guys and, hey, would you want to do this? And everybody said yes, except Brandon Jaggers. And Brandon, the only reason Brandon didn't go on that trip was he was committed to go to Molokai, Hawaii. And so we didn't even have 9 players, and I called Terry back and said, book us a week in June. We'll be able to make this happen. I'll find 9, 10 guys to figure it out. I think we had 6 or 7 when I called Terry back. And then I didn't even know Jacob at that point. Grant called me and said, hey, this guy, call this guy. He might want to go. He's a buddy of mine from high school. He played baseball, so on and so forth. So I called him. It took me a handful of days to run him down. His cell phone was broken or something.
I still contend that it's God kind of working upstream. I had sort of been led to go on mission somewhere. Didn't know what it was, and we had recently started a small group, and so Jacob and I had actually been talking about if we wanted to go to a mission trip, what would it look like? Our church, Long Hollow at the time, was really putting an emphasis towards mission, so we kind of felt like our heart we were being pricked towards international missions, but just didn't know what made sense.
But he called me back, and then we kind of started, getting together and hitting and throwing. And
I got involved in Full Count because Jacob Oldham was my pitching coach in high school at JP2. So he reached out to me and asked me whether I wanted to go on this mission trip. I was reading the book Radical by David Platt, and it really pushed me to seek out an opportunity to. I was just looking for an opportunity.
I think we only went down there with 13 guys.
In the weeks and months leading up to the trip, the core team that was going met together regularly for batting practice and just time to bond together and to get prepared, get in shape to go play baseball. I didn't get a chance to meet any of the guys, so I was kind of going in blind. Going to the airport, all the jokes that they were made. Remember them talking about how LeMay would hit a trash can full of balls and then have to peace out or whatever. But or when John got hit in the face leading up to the trip, when Grant he didn't get behind the L screen. All these things, it was a time for the team to really bond, get to know each other, and I'm coming in blind, so that created some anxiety. So on one hand, I was fired up. The Lord was working in my life. I was fired up to go, so pumped to be going to play baseball on mission. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But on the other hand, I had some anxiety, some fear. I don't know these guys. I'm really young in my walk with the Lord. So am I going to bring anything to the table? Am I going to add any value? What's going to happen? Just the unknown of all that, and then not knowing the men who are going to be serving with, only knowing 2 or 3 of the guys before the trip started. So it was a exciting time and a time full of anxiety. So.
Well, for me, it's the first time I'd ever been on an international mission trip. Most of the guys I didn't know. I'm significantly older than most of the guys in the group.
We got into the trucks. There was 3 of us in the back. We were knee to knee, shoulder to shoulder. It seemed like it took forever to get there. Of course, now we take buses, but back then it was, you take the truck there. And so once we get there and we get set up in the house, then we go over and we watch the game. It's on a Sunday, and we would go over and watch the game, and it really wasn't like baseball we had seen before. There was a lot of cussing. People were drunk on the field. They were very disrespectful to the umpires. And it was just like, so this is what baseball looks like in Nicaragua.
The first trip was hard. The people were hard. It was strictly baseball for us. It seemed weird because we had police escorts in and out of stadiums and stuff that they treated us a little bit like celebrities, and but some of it was a little unnerving because we didn't know what to think. Why are we getting police escorts? Why are they worried about people breaking into our cars? But for them, this was the first time Americans ever had come to their country to play the game. And they didn't really know what to think about us, and we didn't know what to think about them.
I'll never forget, as long as I live, on the very first game we played in Nicaragua. We were over on a community field. We weren't in the stadium, sort of in a kind of a poor part of town. And the field was just a wide open field. They did have a backstop, but there was no outfield fence. It's all dirt, gravel.
I don't know how many people were there, probably 100, 150 people maybe. Nicaraguans came to watch us in the middle of the day, and we were all a little bit nervous. We didn't know what the team ability was going to be, kind of how good they were, and so
we take the field, no expectations. We don't know if we're playing guys that are about to beat our brains in. We don't know if they're good, you know. And I'll never forget, Jeff Parsons was pitching the first game that we played, and he came out for his warm-ups and was just kind of lobbing it in there. I guess he was sort of setting the stage. And at that time, and I know Jeff can still throw it, but he could still light up a radar gun, even though it had been a few years since he played. I'll never forget, as long as I live, the very first pitch, the first fastball he cut loose. The mitt popped. Myself, Jacob, and Nate were playing the outfield. The mitt popped.
that everyone in their stands was just erupted with laughter.
We heard the echo, and then the guy swung. And everyone, there had been a pretty big crowd gathered there in town. Everyone just started laughing, and I guess they'd never seen a fastball like that. So it was a lot of fun, and Jeff proceeded to mow him down the rest of that game, and we came out on the good side.
There's so many memories from that first trip. But you know, a couple that stick with me the most is obviously we've talked about it a lot, but Wednesday night we played a couple ball games. We're doing good on the field. I mean, we're really beating the brakes off these teams, and but we're sitting around Wednesday night like, are we making any kind of difference?
We were smacking teams around pretty good. They couldn't hit Jeff, and we were hitting the ball, all over the place, scoring a lot of runs, and couldn't hit Jacob. And it was a long. You remember, it was a long, tiring week at Wednesday. We got in there on Saturday or Sunday, and by Wednesday we were just literally sitting around that big room in the mission house, and we're just like, what are we doing? Why are we here? And I kind of felt responsible. I was responsible. I got all these guys down here, and
like, are we wasting our time being here?
And we were kind of defeated, even though we had been winning our games or whatnot. It was just a weird vibe, like we've wasted a week of our time, vacation, all this kind of stuff.
Then Alex comes out on Wednesday night and delivers this message to our team. This encouraging message that the community, all they can do is talk about us being there. The baseball community is talking about it. He said, you wouldn't believe, they won't shut up about you guys and what you're doing. People are watching what you're doing. You're having an impact in this city.
They're wanting to know who the gringos are that are riding around in the trucks, going to and from the stadium, playing with their brothers, who the guys are that are playing with their brothers and husbands and the men that they know in the community. And that's all Alex wanted. was to have a conversation with folks, for people to have an opportunity to talk to people about why.
That night, it was just, our team needed it, one, and it was just so encouraging to hear. And I just remember sitting on the back patio of the XMA Mission House that night, a group of us, and we just worshiped all night long. And we cried together. It was kind of hump day. You're getting over the hump. You're tired. You're wore out, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And then Alex, which he's done for the last 10 years, at the right time comes in and encourages our team. And it was just a night that I can still remember. The brothers that were out there with us as we worshiped the Lord.
It's hard to remember a lot of the things without looking back at pictures and seeing some of the stuff that we did. We didn't play as many games as we do now when we go down there. So we had a morning to run a camp with kids and do the dizzy bat race and a slip and slide and pour some soap out there and do that kind of stuff.
We stopped, like we always do, in Esteli, but we had stopped at a gas station, and we just got out, and we didn't know what we didn't know, but I think Beckner had brought a $100 bill. So when you pay with a $100 bill, you get back $1 million, what is it down there, Cordobas? $1 million Cordobas back in change. So that was one thing he did. But Beckner bought a roller dog. I won't eat a roller dog here, but we're 2 hours off this plane in Esteli, and Beckner's chomping down on a hot dog from a gas station in Esteli, Nicaragua. Second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. We get to the mission house, and Terry's giving us the rules, and big rules: don't drink the water. He's telling us, if you do, he's got medication, parasites, all this kind of stuff. And Beckner's like, yeah, I might need some of that parasite medication. My stomach doesn't feel good. It's like, you don't have a parasite, man. You just ate a roller dog at the gas station in Esteli.
So the showers at the house we were in were kind of detached from the house, or behind the house a little bit at the XMA house. And we had one young guy with us on the trip, Jacob Barker. We called him Nuke Lelouch. He was loose as a goose, man. And so he got in the shower one day after we played, and all of a sudden is just screaming at the top of his lungs for Jason Beckner. And he was screaming. Nobody would respond. It turns out that instead of bringing his shampoo to the shower, he brought his suntan lotion. So he had filled his entire head of hair with suntan lotion. It was burning his eyes. He couldn't see, and needed someone to bring him a shampoo. So just remember, I think that might have been when we started calling him Nuke Lelouch.
Chris Edwards became legendary for wearing the same pair of baseball pants through all week long, and I'm pretty sure at the end of that week that those pants would have stood up on their own. So
LeMay, you remember LeMay wearing his fanny pack all week? Everybody busting him up.
Funny incident, I never met Jacob before. In our very first game, there was kids asking for autographs, and I swore no one would have a Sharpie. I mean, they're like, does anyone have a Sharpie? And this clown pulls one out of his back pocket. Like, he had already been preparing to sign autographs. Jacob had one in his pocket.
we take the field. Once again, we have no expectations. And Jacob and Nate and I are warming up in the outfield, and we look in the right center field gap. There's a tree out there that had a monkey tied into it. So once again, we've never been anywhere, and then we're like, there's monkeys in the trees. We're playing on a gravel field. Like, what are we getting into? So it was a pretty unique experience, to say the least.
And then the other thing from trip one was don't flush the toilet paper. You get the rules and you don't flush the toilet paper. And we're sitting around. Jacob comes out and he's like, well, he goes, I did it. He goes, dropped the toilet paper in the toilet. And I was like, yeah, man, I think once or twice is okay. I said, I did it my first trip here one time. I flushed it. It wasn't no big deal. And Jake said, no, I didn't flush it. What do you mean you didn't flush it? He said, I got it out. How'd you get it out? And he just said, I just scooped underneath and got it out. I know you remember the toilets and how bad it smelled. I can't imagine reaching my hand down in to grab poop paper out of those toilets. And if I did, it would probably be with like try to grab a dry edge or something. But Jake scooped under it.
I didn't have to go overseas to Nicaragua or later Honduras and these places to live out my faith. I think we should. We have the opportunity, we have the technology to jump on a plane and go to these countries and play baseball and use our talents and build relationships like we've never been able to do in history. It really brought me back to my daily life.
Well, so in 10 years, the hardest part for me is getting back. As soon as you hit the airport, and then you start, looking, the news is on, it's real easy to get caught back up in the world. And so being there, it's kind of like, it's easy to be a Christian here, there. But it's a whole lot harder to be a Christian here.
A guy who just started his walk with Christ, to every morning to be with a group of men who opened their Word, studied their Word, shared the Word of God, talked about what was going on in their life and how the Word applied to their life. They talked openly about their struggles and what the Lord was teaching them. And every morning, never being around that before in my life. That made a lasting impact in my life. That the Bible is real, it is alive, and it's active. That it is working. It's useful for teaching, correcting, rebuking, training in righteousness. All these scriptures that I now know were brought to life that week.
It's kind of the first time when I thought, I could potentially do this, and so that's when I started to joke with my family about moving to Nicaragua, and then the Lord used that. I really believe that baseball trip and those and the ones after that to give me some confidence that this is something that I can do as I started my own ministry, and as the Lord called me to go to Okatol and continue to serve Him there today.
But I remember as that trip was over, man, I fell in love with the guys, and I remember asking the last night of the trip, I remember asking Nate, I said, hey, and I pointed out 4 or 5 of the guys, and I said, you think those guys would be good for a discipleship group? Because I was thinking about who's going to be my group next year. And so Nate said, well, let me think about it. And I remember walking away like, what's there to think about? Just tell me what you think, And so, but the next morning he comes up to me and he says, okay, I'll do it. And I said, okay, you do what? He said, I'll lead those guys in a year of discipleship. And so it just tickled me because I know that I was asking about them being in my group, but somewhere in between there, God used the Holy Spirit to convict Nate and to challenge him to lead. And that group is the core group of Full Count.
So right off of that first trip, that was another year of just going through discipleship with men. So it was kind of like that was the starting point for me, was that mission trip. We had a blast playing baseball and seeing things that none of us had ever seen before. But I think probably the more lasting impact for me was discipleship. That was the start of I'd been a believer for a lot of years, but I don't know if I'd ever really been discipled. And that was kind of the starting point of discipleship for me.
I'm humbled, that God would use me in this capacity. Because looking back when I was 34, 10 years ago, I really was figuring out my faith, figuring out what it was to be a real man. I had 2 little babies, and a wife, and looking back, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just calling my friends, really, to go on this trip, and the impact that it's had is overwhelming.
You know, I'm just blown away when you think back to the fruit that's come from that first trip. Here 10 years later, we look back and no one had any idea of what God was going to do, that there would be a ministry, that there would be a second trip. Nobody had any expectations. It was 14 men who went to serve for 1 week. And what God did in the hearts of those men is still bearing fruit today. And it's just, it's amazing. So grateful to God, not only what He's done in my own life, what He's done in my own heart, my own life because of that 1 week, but what He's done in the life of many men, both here locally and around the world, because of the obedience of that one trip. So praise God that He's always working upstream, and that He's not done with us yet.